to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
Hello and welcome to the MMA Fan Show. I'm Stu Whiffin. Joining me as ever from down under, Blake Harrison. How are you, mate?
I'm all right, but there's anxiety in the atmosphere down here in Brisbane because we're being hit with the first cyclone they've had in 50 years. So Cyclone Alfred's coming in. Filming has been stopped for a couple of days, so it's very serious. All of the shops are shut, all the restaurants, all their outdoor kind of like tables, chairs, everything, all been taken inside. It's a bit like being back in lockdown.
What have you stocked up on?
What was that? Fizzy drinks, obviously, my Coke Zeros. Gotta have them. I could have done with some fat candy.
That's what you need.
That's what I need. I need my fat candy.
Use that discount code. Use that discount code, Sweet MMA.
Use the discount code, Sweet MMA. Do they ship to Australia?
Only one way to find out.
Only one way to find out. But yeah, do go to fatdandycandy.com and put in the discount code Sweet MMA, and you can get a discount on all your sugary treaty needs.
Absolutely.
I don't know if they ship to Brisbane, but I should find out. But other than that, I've got a few like ready meals and like some chocolate and stuff, protein bars and all that kind of jazz. So I think food-wise, I'm going to be all right. But if the power goes out, which they've said might happen, I'm going to be so bored. Like, I've got my PS5 with me. I brought my PS5 to Australia. So, like, today, I've been playing some Final Fantasy VII. I've been playing some Astro Bot. Like, I've not had a bad day. It's been fine. As days off work go, it's been all right. But if the power goes, oh, boy, I'm going to be left to read a book.
No one does that anymore.
No one does that anymore. Bloody books.
No, that's very old-fashioned books. You have to use your brain and stuff for books.
Oh, I don't want to do. I want to read. You tell me the story while I press buttons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a reason that TVs were made, so you didn't have to do books anymore.
Yeah, too right with him. Too right. Well, if the power goes out, I'm going to be old-fashioned and read a book.
So where you live, my brother lives there, and I know a few other people that live in and around Brisbane. And when I heard that there's...
Can I interrupt you? Does he have an English accent still? Because I have met quite a few English people that have been out here for like a few years, and they all sound Australian.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's been out there, bloody hell, probably like nearly 18, 19 years now. And when he comes home, straight away, I'm like, dude, why are you talking like that? And but then it disappears very quickly. The main thing is A's and O's at the end of like words, which aren't normally there. Like my brother Dan, Dano. Like, why does everyone call him Dano? And it's like, and that kind of thing of like, where people say A at the end of a sentence.
Oh, yeah, to do that.
Like,
Gonna do a podcast tonight, eh?
Yeah.
It's all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, recording your podcast tonight, eh? Mate, it's like, but I was chatting, like, I've been recognised a few times and it's been very, very nice. People have been really lovely. But some lad come up to me and he was with his partner, and his partner, I think, was Australian. And she was like, oh, yeah, he's from Darlington. And I was like, you're from Darlington? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you just sound Australian. Like, where's your... It's like, oh, I've been here a few years. I'm like, no, mate. Like, how has the accent gone that quickly?
Yeah.
It reminds me of, you're not a massive football fan, are you? But Steve McLaren went to manage a football team in Holland. And Steve McLaren was the old England manager, if I'm remembering his name correctly. And he went over and managed like PSV Eindhoven. And like 2 weeks after he was there, he started being like, yes, we are, how do you say, underdogs in this match. And it's like, what's going on? It's so
amazing.
weird.
What I want people to do for the time that you're out there, I'm going to listen to the first episode we recorded when you was in Australia to the last one. And before you know it, like, well, that's a wrap, eh?
That's right. So Alex Pereira going to go knock out Ankalaev, eh?
I want you sounded just like Volt, mate.
Truth, mate. Dan Hooker's out.
Well, we'll be talking about that because we are here today to discuss UFC 313, which goes down this weekend. Headlining the card, I guess we should start with this because this is one of the biggest stars of the UFC, Alex Pereira, and he takes on arguably the fight that everybody thinks could be his biggest test. Just because of maybe the conflict of styles and he's fighting Ankalaev. So before we sort of break that down, Blake, just an overview of 313, because we're not going to discuss every fight on this card because we're going to record another episode today, which will be coming up very soon, which is a Q&A episode. You've all sent in your questions, so thank you very much. But just looking at UFC 313, rank it out of 10. Give it a score out of 10 for what you think the card on the whole ranks as. Because I think it's very. I mean, obviously, most cards are top heavy, but I think it's a little underwhelming.
Well, like I've got to pull it up in front of me because I've only just made like notes on my iPad and everything, and so I have to just go on to looking at the card. So I think I think you can be forgiven for thinking, oh, this is just like a 2-fight card. It's the main and co-main. Who cares? But actually, when you delve a little deeper, there are actually a few really good, interesting fights on this card. So no, it's not. What we're going to get with 314 when they go to Miami is going to be ridiculous as long as everything stays intact. That's going to be a casual's dream, a hardcore fan's dream. It's great. This one is probably better than you think. We know what the main and co-main is, but Jalen Turner Bahamundes is a great fight. That is a really good fight. 2 6'3" guys at lightweight, and both of them can crack. It's a really good fight. Green versus Rufi is really interesting. Rufi's one of those fight nerds guys, and he's looked like the kind of Brazilian Conor McGregor in the way his stance is and his style and all that stuff. I don't know that he'll ever reach those heights. I mean, even just inside the cage, let alone outside the cage. But he's still a very fun fighter. Curtis Blades, we'll mention this later down on the prelims. I mean, this guy is one of the best heavyweights on the planet, and he's fighting a guy on his UFC debut, which is mental. Joshua Van is a fun fighter down at 125. I think there's always a chance that Morono Leal, yes, there's no stakes in that fight, but it could be a fun fight. And I think there's a few of them, Petrosian, Ferreira maybe as well, that could be fun fights. Gutierrez, Castaneda. So, I mean, I'd give it a 7 to an 8. But it's probably more like 7.5. I think it's better than what you think it is, but when you look at it, and I think the outcome will be better than what we anticipate it will be in terms of how much fun you can have watching the whole of this card. But at the end of the day, this card in terms of its memory and longevity is going to live and die on the co-main and the main.
Yeah.
And if those fights are good, I think people will walk away very, very happy.
Okay. Well, look, let's discuss the big boys and let's discuss Pereira versus Ankalaev. Now, do you agree with what I sort of said at the beginning, that this is probably on paper, if you look at the sort of fight styles, this is the biggest test for Ankalaev. I guess for Ankalaev and for Pereira. I guess most people are going to say that Ankalaev wrestling is very, very good, and he's going to, well, if he stands and trades with Pereira, then I don't think that's the way forward.
The closer we've got to this fight, the less sure I am of what's going to happen. I've been saying for the last few years, Ankalaev's the best light heavyweight on the world. He just needs to get his shot, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Pereira, he'll take him down, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what it was in terms of maybe it was the fact that he's Dagestani and he has used takedowns every now and again, but he's not that often taking people down. He's more of a striker than a wrestler. And I'm starting to think, have we got Ankalaev wrong? I mean, you famously called him Magomed mega boring. And I think that
I forgot about that.
I think maybe you've been a bit harsh. And I think also we've all got sucked into this thing, which is fair to do at times or whatever. But like you see the Dagestani guys, you see the beard, you hear the Russian name, and you think, oh, grappler, wrestler. And he can do bits of it, but he's not Khabib by any stretch. He's not, I know Chimaev's not Dagestani necessarily, but he's not Chimaev. He's not a Bo Nickel. You know, he's not just like Route 1 wrestle, take you down. That's not his game at all.
Should that be his game this time, though?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, of course. But, I mean, he's on a 13-fight unbeaten streak, Ankalaev. He is very, very, very good. Now, 13-fight unbeaten streak doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. You know, he's got 6 finishes, so he's not as boring as we think, but he's 6 finishes. One of those was Anthony Smith, where Anthony Smith sort of got injured halfway through, so I don't know how much to count that one. And he's got 6 decisions, including 1 draw, and he's got 1 no contest due to him throwing that illegal knee on Johnny Walker. All his finishes have been by strikes.
So
none of his finishes have been submissions in the UFC.
So his last loss was the Paul Craig one, yeah?
His last loss was the Paul Craig one, which was his debut where he dominated.
Absolutely.
Dominated most of the fight. And then Paul Craig threw up a triangle with seconds to go, and with the last second on the clock, Ankalaev tapped out. So I'm starting to think, you know, he beat Rakic on the feet by decision. All his finishes are strikes. And it just starts to make me go, is he the wrestler that we thought he was? Is he the tech for Pereira that we thought he was? And now I'm not so sure. I mean, he used wrestling in the Blachowicz fight when Blachowicz was getting the better of him. And you know what Blachowicz was getting the better of him with? The story of that fight was the calf kicks. And Alex Pereira is a much better kicker than Jan Blachowicz. So that makes me go, Jesus, if he can't get those takedowns in the first few minutes and Pereira lands a few calf kicks, I think Ankalaev is bang in trouble.
I mean, I'll ask you in a minute how you think this fight is going to go and who you're going to pick to win it. But let's say, for argument's sake, Pereira gets the win by KO. Okay. Yeah. Do we then start getting really overexcited about Alex Pereira and what he has brought to the UFC and his legacy? And, you know, are we looking at something really special then?
Well, I had a question for you, actually. And I think we can incorporate your question into this. But I was just going to say to you, true or false, win or lose, Alex Pereira's next fight is at heavyweight.
Yeah. Unless,
win or lose.
I guess it depends how he loses. Because, well, would he get the rematch, an immediate rematch? Is that written into the contract?
Well, it's not written into the contract. The UFC never puts that in the contracts, but I do think they would offer it to him for sure.
Yeah, and I guess it all depends, you know, if he loses, how he loses, and if it's a tight decision, then run it back. And other than that, you know, if he gets sort of, you know, I can't see it, but like sort of humiliated and wrestled and you know, really exposed, you know, the flaws in his game, which we've yet to see, then I think, yeah, I think his next fight will be at heavyweight. I think he'll then look up and he'll have some fun matches with, I'm presuming, predominantly strikers. Do you not think?
I had my answers to this question all mapped out, and the way you've spoken has maybe slightly made me rethink something, because I was going to say, regardless of the outcome, win or lose, Alex Pereira's next fight's going to be at heavyweight. And I think he either fights John Jones or he fights Tom Aspinall.
Wow.
And that's what I think could happen. With a loss, maybe he'd have to get a fight in against someone before an Aspinall or something like that. But I don't know what's going to happen with the Jones versus Aspinall thing. I'm not confident they're going to make that fight. There is a world, if Alex wins, I think he's definitely going up to heavyweight. And I think it makes all the sense in the world to just turn around to John and go, are you fighting or not? And if he says no, you go, fine, we're taking the belt. I mean, maybe that's too much for the UFC to do. Maybe that's bad publicity. I don't know. He did only defend the belt in November, so maybe that would be too much.
Just take that belt off of him. Just take it off of him. And if he wants it, fight for it.
He defended it 4 or 5 months ago or whatever it was. I don't know.
Who cares about that fight?
I mean, I agree with you, but I don't know that you can do it. It's not a great look, but the UFC does what they want. But I think they want to keep Jones on side. And I just don't know how you negotiate that, because I do think there's a world in which you can go, let's make Aspinall versus Pereira for the belt. Like, just give the belt to Aspinall, he defends it against Pereira, or say the belt's now vacant, Aspinall v Pereira for the undisputed title. And Tom came out recently saying, my next fight, no ifs, no buts, is to the undisputed belt. He didn't say it was against Jones.
And he should say that. He should say that.
Belt. Yeah, because he doesn't. There's no guarantee Jones comes to the table with this. So if he fights Pereira for the belt, that makes as much sense as anything, because there's no one at heavyweight really challenging Tom in this moment to go, hey, I'm the next guy up. I know it's Jones, then you, but I'm next. There's no one there. It's all just a few people, and none of them are really jumping out. So I think Pereira with a win here can do what he wants, and I think he can go to heavyweight, and I think he could do something special. But I wouldn't be surprised if Pereira would rather fight Jones, and Jones would rather fight Pereira, and they make that happen. So, it would be a real shame for Tom, but I think they could do it.
So do you think in 2025, as we chat right now, if we look at the biggest names in the UFC, now let's look at those casuals, right? Do you think the casuals are bigger fans of Alex Pereira or John Jones?
I don't know. I think so. When you say fans, that makes me think people that like you. And I just think
no one likes John Jones. He's a piece of shit. But
but people do. That's the thing. People do. Like, I talk to my brother about this all the time, and it's like he doesn't really care about the out of the cage stuff. He's like, oh no, John Jones, and all this stuff. And it's
these are people that have watched the UFC for years and can remember, John Jones as a light heavyweight, just dominating everybody. But I think if you're you've got into it sort of maybe over the last 5 years, John Jones, how much does he mean to you? Like, because if you watch a John Jones highlight reel and an Alex Pereira highlight reel, I know which one looks the best. And that's not taken into the deep dive of the narrative behind all the fights and what John Jones has achieved in the octagon. Make no mistake about that. But I think, like, if you've got in that sport in the last 5 years and you've, really got into it of late, Alex Pereira is a way more exciting. And you've just watched John Jones versus Stipe. I know what fights you're interested in watching, and I don't think he's John Jones. I think Pereira could be the biggest star in the UFC at the moment.
You got to remember, John Jones finished Stipe with a spinning back kick like that. It was like, was it was that, wasn't it? He like back kicked him to the guts, didn't he? So I think that hardcore fans are more like, we know what Jones is like. We obviously, what an achievement for what he did as a light heavyweight, and he's arguably the best to ever do it. But a lot of the outside the cage stuff does tarnish that. And I think in terms of fans and people that actually do kind of love you and love what you do and all that kind of stuff, I think Pereira is maybe in a better slot than Jones at the moment. However, I think just for notoriety, for just knowing that person, bums on seats, you see the name John Jones, and I think more people go, oh, John Jones is fighting than, all Alex Pereira's fighting.
Right.
So I think Jones to the UFC as a business is still the much bigger star.
But is that all John Jones is fighting? Because he never fucking fights. He never fights. We never see him.
You can't. I don't know if you can say that because he did fight in November.
Yeah, but he handpicked his opponent.
Yes, but the casual fans don't care.
And they maybe
don't. They're not
the
aware.
Casuals want to see him fight Tom Aspinall.
They're buying into what Dana White is saying. Dana White says John Jones is the best fighter in the world. He's pound for pound number one. If you lock him in a room with anyone, he's the one walking out and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, and he's also saying Stipe Miocic is the greatest heavyweight of all time, and John Jones is the best to ever do it. That's the fight. And then casual fans go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm going to go do that. I'll go and watch that." That's what they're doing. They're not going to go. Hang on.
Can I just say, I've known you a long time. Years. I've known you a long time now, and that was the first time that you done your Neil face. I've never seen your Neil face until you just done a casual.
Yeah. That's what I based Neil on. Those fans that can't realise that Stipe was 4 years out.
I think that the thing when we talk about what Dana's saying about Jones and Stipe, when he says they are, he should say they were. Because Stipe was one of the greatest heavyweights.
No, but he shouldn't because he's a promoter.
I know
he's a promoter.
I know that.
So he shouldn't do that. But we as fans need to do our homework, and hopefully part of that homework for a lot of people is listening to this show where we do the homework for you.
Yeah.
And we can tell you that Stipe Miocic did not have a single win or I think even a fight against anyone that is currently fighting in the UFC, let alone ranked fighters, anyone fighting in the UFC. So, yeah, that was what it was. But I think ultimately Jones is still the biggest star. He probably still has way more social media followers than Alex Pereira. I don't know that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think he probably
I saw a video
quite a bit more.
of him arriving. Where is the event on Saturday? Remind me where the event is this Saturday. But he was arriving and he walked out. It is T-Mobile Arena.
It's Vegas. It's in Vegas.
So he arrived. I don't know if it was at an airport, but there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people waiting for his arrival. And when he walked out, he done the walkout and the crowd were losing their shit. And it's like, does John Jones get that? I don't think so.
I think he probably would get people turning up for him a little bit. Obviously, he doesn't have a signature walkout of it. But again, that's the thing is, I think if you're talking about just the love of the fans, Pereira is almost probably untouchable at the moment. But when it comes to name value, bums on seats, pay-per-view, I still think John Jones is bigger.
Okay. All right. So I guess let's look at the other side of what could happen. So if we imagine that Ankalaev gets the win, what's next for him? Do the UFC literally go, who the fuck can we get to beat him quickly? Like, what do you think?
They'll throw fun contenders at him. That is the thing, is like a lot of the people that the UFC would be up for being champion, I think, outside of Poatan, is Yuri Prochazka, maybe Jamal Hill. I mean, Carlos Ulberg is someone that you look at and go, well, he could be, if he gets the wins, you know, he could be someone really good to watch.
He's fighting Blachowicz, isn't he, in London?
Yes, I think so. I'm not 100% sure. I think so. So, yeah, there's definitely options there for fun title defenses against people that the fans know. Yuri Prochazka being the number one on the list. Yeah. So I think that's a big fight. You can always do the rematch with Poatan if he accepts it, but I do think he'll want to go to heavyweight. Poatan's like 37 or something like that. I think he wants to make history, and even if he loses the belt, if he can go up and try and get a belt at heavyweight, then that's worth the risk. It's worth trying it. Thing with Ankalaev, that's the other interesting thing about this fight, is it's Ramadan. And that is going to negatively impact your training. The fact that you're fasting, you're not drinking enough water. Now, he has admitted that or said he is going to break some of his fast, but purely just for water during fight week for the weight cuts. Because if he's not drinking enough water, like it's going to be incredibly dangerous for him. So he is going to break the fast ever so slightly for that. But even so, his training is going to have been impacted. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like fasting all day whilst doing those intense training sessions that you need to go on and be a potential champion.
And to recover.
And recovering, all that stuff. So I do think that could have an impact on this fight. The fact that it is in Ramadan, but he's obviously had to take the fight. I don't think he had a choice. I don't think he can turn down the fight. This isn't, we're seeing stuff recently about the UFC, TKO, and Turkey Al-Sheikh getting into a new boxing thing and all of that. This isn't, mandatory rankings and you're a part of the IBF and the WBO. And this is just the one thing, the UFC. And if you don't do what they say, they will make life difficult for you. We've seen it before. We always reference the fact that Leon Edwards, because it was lockdown, said, I can't fight Khamzat Chimaev. I've got no gym to go to. And the UFC removed him from the rankings when he was on a crazy win streak. And he was about third or something. Like, the UFC can do what they want. So I don't think Ankalaev had much of a choice. He had to take this fight during Ramadan or he doesn't get the fight.
Yeah, because they did not want to make this fight. Make no mistakes. No. Nobody, like if you've got the golden boy in Alex Pereira, you do not want him, you do not want the champion of that division to be replaced by Ankalaev because he's not a fan favorite. He's not the most explosive, fire. And that shouldn't impact on fights being made, but as you say, it does because the UFC want pay-per-views and they want exciting fights. So, okay, well, look, before we move on to the next fight, go on.
Can I just ask you one thing?
Yeah.
What fight do you want to see out of the main event? What do you want to see?
I just want to see Alex Pereira knock him out. I want to see it. Like I've got no issues with Ankalaev. I know I called him boring. Sorry, mega boring. But his last, he has been a bit boring. I
don't think he's as bad as everyone thinks. But,
no, but he's for somebody that wants a title shot.
Pereira.
He's not Pereira. No one is at the moment, though. That's the thing. No. And I think, but if you look at Yuri, you think there's a fighter I want to see fight.
Yes.
Like, and
I mean, even Jamal Hill.
Yeah.
Jamal Hill, for all of his flaws and some of his out of the cage, antics or things that he says, whatever. Like, he's a fun fighter to watch most of the time.
Absolutely. So, and if you want to kind of get a bit of a grasp on some of the things that made Jamal Hill maybe a little bit wild, we had him on the show a while back, and he talks about his upbringing and people being shot and stuff. It was pretty crazy. So, if you've not listened to that episode, go and check out our chat with Jamal Hill from a while back. All right.
And I just said, the fight that I want to see, what I really want to see in this fight is Pereira's takedown defense tested. I really want to see that because either he gets taken down and we go, he's a kickboxer, well done on getting as far as he has. There's a massive hole there. It will never be fixed. He's too old. We know who Pereira is. Or Ankalaev tries to take him down a few times. Pereira stuffs the takedowns or gets back to his feet, ends up knocking Ankalaev out, and we start going, oh my God, maybe he could do it against Jones. Maybe he could do it against Aspinall.
That's where it all happens, isn't it? If the takedown defense is there, then all of a sudden they're going to go, let's give him John Jones. Probably not Tom Aspinall, because I think Tom's too well-rounded. I think, John can... Sorry.
No. But that's the thing, is like, we've got to see that. I don't want... If Pereira goes out there and left hook knocks him out in the first minute, we haven't learned anything. Like, it's just, okay. I still don't know. Whereas if this fight goes for at least 2 rounds or something like that. And we've seen the takedowns and we've seen him tested in that way. And then he knocks him out.
Yeah.
Then you go, we could be on something really special here. Send him up to heavyweight and just see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, coming in. Who are you picking?
I've sort of got to pick Ankalaev because I've been riding the Ankalaev train for the last 3 years. I can't back out now. Although this is the least confident I've been in Ankalaev winning than I've ever been.
How's he win?
But I have to stick with it. Who are you going for?
How's he win?
How does Ankalaev win?
Yeah.
I think it's maybe a stoppage in the 3rd round. I reckon he takes him down. He gets Pereira really tired. He doesn't quite. Or maybe it's earlier. Maybe it's the 2nd round or something. I don't know. I think either way, this fight I don't think this is going to a decision. I think either Pereira knocks him out early or maybe Ankalaev finishes Pereira early because I'm just anticipating the hole in the game being too big and Ankalaev on the ground. I mean, surely you've been training just to wrestle the hell out of this for a long time. And whether it's ground and pound or a submission, you would imagine Ankalaev's gonna do this. But maybe it's a bit of a he is mega boring and he sort of lies on him for the best part 5 rounds. I don't know, but I'm going Ankalaev.
Okay. Right, I'm going to just throw my 2 pence in as well. I'm going to say that I think Pereira is going to calf kick him quite heavy at the very start of the fight, and I think he's going to get a 1st round stoppage.
Well, with that the one time we've seen Ankalaev in big trouble was the calf kicks from Jan Blachowicz. So I think that's a very solid prediction from you, Whiffin. You won't hear me say that very often, but I mean, that is a very fair prediction. Right.
Okay.
Shall we move on to the co-main event?
And it's the fight that it's a good fight, but it's not what we want, is it?
No, and that was my thing. Was like, do you think the card has suffered by swapping Hooker?
Well, do you know what, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest here, right? Now, we love Dan Hooker. Go check out our episodes with Dan. We had him on a while ago, out of his fight with Arnold Allen. And look, it's easy to get caught up in Dan Hooker fever, right? All the kind of covered in blood, I love this shit and all of that. Like, because he's great and he's an absolute fucking lunatic.
Dan Hooker fever.
And like, it's easily done. But like, we just presumed that it was going to be them two standing toe to toe, him and Gaethje just throwing. And I don't know if it would have played out like that. I don't know. And but ultimately, obviously Dan Hooker has got a hand injury and it's not happening. And, you know, I was gutted because, you know, I am riddled with Hooker fever. But we've now got Fiziev stepping in for a rematch with Gaethje. Could this be an exciting fight? I think it could be. I think like Fiziev, great fighter, and Gaethje, I'm not disappointed at this fight, but I think the name Fiziev is not gonna whip people up into like, oh, this is gonna be an absolute war, like I think the narrative for the Hooker fight was.
Yeah, I mean, I think the stakes were higher with Hooker versus
That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
The fact that Hooker was on a bit of a win streak, the fact that what was his last win? I can't remember, was his last win the Jalen Turner fight or was that the one before?
No, who'd he beat after that? It was the I Love That Shit, wasn't it? Where is it?
Trying to think now. I can't remember who his last fight was against.
And his last fight.
Oh, Gamrot. He was against Mateusz Gamrot.
Yeah.
So he's on a 3-fight win streak. He's had a lot of injuries. He's only had 3 fights in 3 years. But Jalen Turner, really good fighter, another fighter on this card. Gamrot, really good fighter. And both those fights, really fun fights. And the Gaethje fight was meant to be, I think, a kind of instant classic. Like, you look at that fight and go, that's got fight of the year contender written all over it. I was super excited for that fight. And because we've seen the Fiziev fight before, and because Fiziev is technically on a losing streak, although one of those is an injury against Gamrot.
Yeah.
But his other fight was the loss against Gaethje.
Yeah.
So we haven't really, so that's the other thing, is we haven't really seen Fiziev fight since the Gaethje loss, because he fought Gamrot, got injured very quickly, and it was kind of a nothing thing. So I am a little bit disappointed. Having said that, when I first heard about this, I was gutted. I was really disappointed.
Yeah.
And what I've done is I've gone back and rewatched the first Gaethje v Fiziev fight.
That went to a decision, didn't it?
Yeah, and it was close. Like, you could have scored it for Fiziev. There was a 10-8 round, I think, for Gaethje. There was never a 10-8 round. And yeah, the scorecards could have gone either way. It was a very close fight. And that makes me actually more excited for this. And just watching the fight and how great a fight it was has made me more excited for this. Again, the worry is that if Gaethje wins this fight, is he just fighting Hooker afterwards? Like, when Hooker's ready? Like, it's not much of a progression, you know? Like, because I don't know what else you'd do with him. Maybe.
I think Gaethje's just floating around for great fights now. I don't think, whereas I think if Hooker would have won, I think there could have been real title implications there.
See, I think the opposite.
Oh, really?
Because Hooker's got a loss to Makhachev already, and it was done in seconds with that Kimura. Gaethje hasn't fought Makhachev yet, and Gaethje's a big name. So I do think that Gaethje, with a win over Hooker, has thrown his hat into the ring. Obviously, did you know what I really wish would have happened? This wouldn't have been as good a fight, but it would have just been, I think, the right thing, is if, like, Arman Sarukian stepped in on short notice. He's upset the UFC recently. If he could have made the weight and stepped in on short notice.
That's a really good shout, Blake Harrison.
I would have just sorted things out, would have got him a win. Come on, Makhachev, I know I was injured before. It wasn't my fault. Let's make that fight. Or, what if Ilia Topuria went gangster and just went, I'm coming in.
Stop fucking teasing me now, Blake. That's too good.
I told you I'm coming to lightweight. Let me go and fuck up Justin Gaethje, who is everyone's second favorite fighter, or first, rather. Every fighter's favorite fighter.
Yeah. He's working his way through them all. Everyone that people love, he's destroying them.
Everyone's that people love. That's it. Volk, Max, do Gaethje next. Then, so I think that would have been great. I mean, maybe he's going straight into a title shot. Who knows? But that would have, can you imagine how gangster that would have been? Oh, yeah, just like a couple of weeks' notice. Yeah, I'll go and fuck up Justin Gaethje and then give me my title shot. Yeah. And Islam could say nothing. If he goes and knocks out Gaethje, Islam has to go, well, yeah, you're fine. You're the next guy up. Yeah. So that would have been slick.
Yeah.
That would have been so good.
This is a great opportunity for Fiziev. I think, like, he said, I want to shake Justin Gaethje by the hand and say thank you for this opportunity. Yeah. Like, and I love shit like that. And it's a great opportunity to fight one of the biggest names in the sport again, and put yourself right back into the mix with a win. So I think he
might win.
Yeah, and so it's a great fight for Fiziev, but it is a nothing fight for Justin Gaethje. I don't think it does anything for him.
I think, unfortunately, you might be right. I think that Fiziev's got everything to gain. He'll move up the rankings. It's a massive win. It's revenge for his loss. And the other thing is, Justin's had a good amount of time off, so he should have recovered. But this is Gaethje's first fight back after being absolutely flatlined by Max at UFC 300. Biggest stage of them all. He's on the wrong end of arguably the most iconic moment in UFC history now.
I think he's above that. I think he's above that.
Could do a number on you. He's never been knocked out. And I remember us interviewing Brad Pickett in one of our first ever episodes. And I think even he was saying after he got knocked out, things just changed.
He fought different, didn't he?
He fought differently. He just didn't, it just wasn't quite the same. He didn't have that fearlessness that he once had. And you never know what we're going to get. Obviously, we're expecting Gaethje to be Gaethje.
Well, we know that
we don't
Gaethje,
know for sure.
He's not afraid to take one to get one off. And like,
but maybe he will be now that he's been knocked out.
Exactly. Like, so it's interesting. Okay, so what else did we want to sort of touch on? Because as we've said at the beginning, it's not a huge card. But I mean, let's just discuss the fact that we've discussed the main and the co-main, and then there's other fights on the main card, and then way down is Curtis Blades. Now, this feels really unfair because how long ago was Curtis Blades fighting for the interim title? Wasn't that long ago, was it?
Like, was it just over a year? Was it a year ago?
Do you know what I mean? So you're,
wasn't long ago, was it?
Top of the tree, and I know Tom knocked him out.
Maybe it was less than a year ago.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Was that Tom's? Yeah, it may have been less than a year ago.
Yeah, rough, man. Like, I don't know. I know he's not the most charismatic of guys in interviews and things like that. He's not a big talker. But as you said earlier, he's one of the best heavyweights on the planet. And it feels quite disrespectful, I think, that for somebody that's achieved the wins he's had, and to then be fighting somebody on their UFC debut, like, that feels really unfair.
And that's not even the full story. This fight was meant to be on a card previously, and we talked about this before we knew it had been taken from that card. It was one of the fight nights. Fiziev, not just on his debut, but less than 2 years ago, he fought Renan Ferreira, and I think technically he won the fight, but it's been overturned to a no contest because he popped for such a ridiculous list of steroids. It baffles me that the UFC have brought him in so quickly. Like, this man popped for everything. It wasn't traces of this and traces. He popped for loads of stuff. You go onto the Tapology page and look at why that fight's been overturned. It is a laundry list of steroids. And to put Curtis Blades on the prelims, which is what it is saying he's on the prelims, maybe they'll change things around closer to the fight, who knows. But to do that and to be taking on a guy with this history, unranked in his UFC debut, to me, I really don't like it. I don't like it too. I feel really bad for Curtis Blades. I don't know who he's upset, but clearly someone's very unhappy with him, and I doubt it's Curtis Blades' fault. I'm not happy with this in its fight placement or the fact that a fight's happening at all.
I don't know if
he's a real shame.
He's someone that sort of just tells it as it is, because I don't know if you remember, but when we was at UFC London, when he beat Tom with the leg injury, and we was at the back at the end in the media room, the post fight, and Paddy and Molly were still celebrating and chatting, and then when they left the stage, Curtis Blades come out, and he was really unhappy that they took up time chatting and that he'd been kept waiting. And I remember him coming out, and he straight away was like quite vocal about the fact he was pissed off at, like, the way he was being treated and stuff like that. And I don't know if that's just who Curtis Blades is. If he is somebody that if he feels like he's being done wrong, then he will speak up and make his feelings known, and maybe he doesn't roll, for want of a better description, roll with the punches. And maybe the UFC don't like people like that kind of speak up. I'm basing this on one very small thing, but I don't know. Like,
I don't even remember that, to be honest. But
I presume he's done something to be treated the way he's being treated at the moment, because
maybe
it feels rough.
Style. Sometimes people can be really nice, great, all those things, but his style doesn't captivate fans, and the UFC just aren't interested. So I don't know. Let's just talk about a few other fights. Amanda Lemos versus Yasmin Lucindo, ranked strawweight fight. Lemos has had a mixed run of late. She's 3-3 in her last 6. Losses to Andrade, Zhang, Weili, and Dina Jandiroba, who could be staring down a title shot next if she gets past Yan Jinan. She's got wins over Mackenzie Dern, Marina Rodriguez, and Michelle Watson. So it's kind of like those first three names feel like they're kind of up here. Those second three names feel like they're here. And Lemos is just clearly somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's too early to tell which side of that gap Yasmin Lucindo kind of fits into. Because, you know, she's only 23. She's on a 4-fight win streak in the UFC. This is the toughest test she's probably had. And it's such a young age. But, you know, when you are that young, you're constantly improving. You're constantly learning. And a win here puts her in the top 5 at 23 years of age. And, you know, she might only need one win after that. Plus, if Zhang goes up to 125 and they need an interim title fight or a vacant title fight or something like that, you look at Lucindo, who, if she wins this fight, is on a 5-fight win streak. Really young.
Could easily come her way.
Energetic. Could easily come her way. She's a potential fresh opponent for Zhang if they're doing interim and Zhang's got to come back down and defend. She could go on to become one of the youngest UFC champs in history if she makes something special happen. I mean, she's got to get past Lemos, and then she'll obviously have to fight a Zhang or someone else for an interim or vacant or whatever. But she, at 23 years of age, could be going down as one of, I don't think she'd beat Jones's record, but I think she'd be one of the youngest champs in UFC history if things work out for her. So we'll have to see. So there's potential history to be made there. One of your favorites, I think, King Green, isn't he?
I love him. I think he's great.
You love a bit of King Green. He's up against Mauricio Ruffi, one of the fighting nerds, one of the most popular gyms at the moment in MMA. Have you got any thoughts on this fight?
I just think Bobby Green's got to make a bit of a statement. I think he's, you know, after the loss to Paddy, I think he's going to want to kind of remind the UFC that he's one of the best strikers in the organisation, and I hope that he grabs that moment and he showcases that. I think he's a really fun fighter, and yeah, I just think he's got something to prove now. And I think if he loses this, then I don't know. I think fans love. I always want to call him Bobby Green. You know, fans love King Green. I think, you know, I love it when he chats to fighters in the middle of the octagon. I love it, and generally he's in like pretty fun fights. And when he's on form, and he finds his distance and he can let his hands fly, I think he's so exciting to watch. I love watching him box.
Well, I mean, look, I think he's going to be Ruffi's toughest fight to date. Green's boxing is great, really good fun fighter. When he gets his mouth going as well, when he's talking trash in there, that's always really fun as well. But I have to go with Mauricio Ruffi. I think he's got youth and athleticism on his side, and he's that guy that's like the kind of Brazilian Conor thing. I think we mentioned this earlier in the show. He's got that kind of Conor stance, and the way he manages distance. He's got great movement and he flips and rolls punches really well. He's got flashy kicks as well. I'll always remember that Jamie Malarkey fight where he did almost like a breakdancing style scissor trip on him and stuff. Like, this guy's got skills. And so, I really think this could be an exciting fight, but I have to lean Ruffi, and I think he could get a finish.
Okay.
And then another fight, like lightweight is such a phenomenal weight class. So with Gaethje Fiziev and Gaethje Hooker would have been even better. Green versus Ruffi, really good fight. Jalen Turner, Bahamundis, both guys 6'3". This is a fantastic fight. Turner's been on like a bit of a dodgy run of form lately. He's 1-3 in his last 4. But I think a couple of those are close split decisions. One of them's a Dan Hooker, one of them's a Mateusz Gamrot with those losses.
On paper, this is a banger.
It's a banger. And if you remember the Dan Hooker fight, Jalen Turner was fucking Dan Hooker up for about a round and a bit. And then all of a sudden, Hooker just started to come back, and it was really great. And Jalen Turner had a really bad weight cut that fight as well, so he could have been gassing out. And then also, there was the fight against Moicano, where Jalen Turner thought he KO'd him, walked off, and the ref was like, no, carry on. And then Moicano was able to recover, take him down, and finished him. Yeah. And you're like, Jalen, he could have been on a 4-fight win streak if the judges had just scored things slightly differently, and if he hadn't done that quite silly rookie error against Moicano.
He'll be kicking himself forever about that.
Oh, you would imagine so. It could easily have been a better record for him. But he's up against Bahamundes, who's very much the reverse. He's 3-1 in his last 4. Last 2 fights have been first round finishes for Bahamundes, and one of them was against Manuel Torres, who I really rate. I think Manuel Torres is a great fighter, really, really good. So yeah, we're looking at 2 tall, lanky strikers. It's basically it's like a birthday present to me.
Yeah, you looking at yourself in the mirror, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. I'm looking at I see myself in these 2 lanky strikers. That's what it is. So it's definitely a Blake's delight, this one. So definitely look at it, because both these guys can crack. That's gonna be a fun fight. So yeah, I mean, I've not got anything else to really talk about on this, unless there's anything you wanted to shout about.
No, not really. I think, it's a top heavy card, and hopefully, on that undercard we see some exciting stuff that will give us more to talk about next week when we do the post-fight show. In a moment, we're going to record a Q&A episode with the questions that you've set in. So if you haven't subscribed to the show already, give us a little subscribe over on YouTube or on whatever podcast platform you listen to this show on, and we'll get cracking with your questions. And always, if you've got questions for us, drop us a DM on the Instagram, and we'll do our best, or comment on the videos, and we'll do our best to bank them questions and throw them in for a future Q&A episode. Blake mentioned at the beginning, the sponsor of this show is Fat Candy, and you can save your money buying their freeze-dried goodies at fatcandy.com and use that discount code SWEETMMA. That's SWEETMMA over at fatcandy.com. Are we done, Blake Harrison?
We're done. And obviously, as always, we will try and get a post 313 show over to you after all the action goes down in Vegas.
If we don't, that means Blake's reading a book.
It means Blake's reading a book, or I've been swept away by Cyclone Alfred, one or the other. So, yeah. Thank you very much for listening, guys. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.